Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the world's most watched professional wrestling news program. Welcome to the international phenomenon that is known as the Pro Wrestling Report. Dameon Nelson sitting here alongside the man they call... You're not Meathead.
Oh, I am not Meathead, not even close.
Frank Cossentino sitting in for Meathead this week as Meathead is off on assignment. He'll be back next week as we do the Honors program, our year-end award show. Frank, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good.
Trying to fill the seat of Meathead this week, which would be impossible.
That won't be too difficult.
I will try my best.
On a foggy day here in our Milwaukee headquarters, along with a foggy day at Heathrow Airport.
Yes,
over in the,
millions
across the
could
pond.
not get out. And same thing in Denver. For our viewers out in Denver, they're stuck in the snow over there.
They got some issues in Denver, but nevertheless, we are still here with you for this, the Pro Wrestling Report for Friday, December 22nd, 2006. Let's hit the ground running with our top story, ladies and gentlemen. This week's top story is WWE Armageddon. From just last Sunday, the sleeper pay-per-view hit of the month, and a series of 4 or 5 pay-per-views coming weeks in a row, Armageddon from SmackDown delivers a great show. Frank, the show was billed with some very good matches, some gimmick matches at the same time, but the key for that pay-per-view were the many surprises that we got that were unexpected, namely the ladder match that, quite frankly, stole the show.
Yeah, Teddy Long comes out and basically says, we're going to have a ladder match. And I don't know if it would have been a good idea to announce it beforehand, or because sometimes when you decide to have some changes or someone grabs the mic in between and says, no, this match is going to be a no-holds barred.
Over the Edge 98, Patterson and Briscoe.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, this match is now no holds barred.
But in this case, it delivered, and it delivered for Joey Mercury big time, as he didn't look so good after that one.
Not at all. Joey Mercury suffering a broken nose, needing upwards of 30 stitches from one of the sickest bumps I've ever seen in professional wrestling. Some have equated it to Sid Vicious when he broke his leg coming down off the top rope back in WCW, I believe in 1999 or 2000. A stiff bump, a match that was going to start out for the WWE Tag Team Championship of Brian Kendrick and Paul London going up against Steven Regal and Dave Taylor. Not Dave Taylor, that's the big boss man, he's dead. That was the original match that was supposed to be.
Right.
Teddy Long comes out and hotly introduces the fact that it will not just be a tag team match for the championships, but it will be a ladder match. Now we're talking, folks. This is the second match of the card, by the way. Not only will it be a ladder match, but there are 2 teams that Teddy Long has added to the match. The fans knew right away who those teams were going to be. Obviously, Eminem and the Hardys, the pay-per-view savers, if you will, from the last couple of pay-per-views. Now, a lot of gimmick matches, Frank Cossentino.
Right.
There was the Inferno match that opened up the show.
Starting out the evening.
The ladder match. The last ride match. John Cena in a tag team championship match, first time teaming up with the SmackDown champion of Batista. Were there too many gimmick matches on this particular pay-per-view?
No. They needed to do as much as they can, having this being a SmackDown, per se, pay-per-view. And SmackDown, and obviously I haven't had that opportunity to mention that SmackDown comes off as the inferior program. That's perception. Of course, that's what WWE wants you to believe. So in this case, I don't think they overdid it. You've got to get people to watch, and you've got to do whatever it takes to do that. Maybe it's a little crazy to have an Inferno match in the start, but just to get people to watch, you've got to do it. Unfortunately, the ending kind of left you with that sour taste where you said, now we know why it's SmackDown. And maybe it's not SmackDown itself, it just happened to be Booker T and Batista, which...
that's King Booker.
King Booker. Something happened there.
Something happened. Batista couldn't do what he needed to do in the matchup. As you saw in the end of the matches, we've now fast-forwarded to the main event from Armageddon. There were some clear communication issues between Book and Batista, and the last couple of moves of that match were sloppy at best. And quite frankly, we've seen better main events from those two on SmackDown.
Right.
And there are many saying now that you see so many long matches on SmackDown, specifically featuring Batista, because there's a belief internally within WWE that Batista is the one driving the high ratings on SmackDown, as the ratings have been higher than they have been in past months. So that's why you see him in longer matches. But be that as it may, I think that the ladder match, the Inferno match, the last ride match, the energy of the pay-per-view, carried so much momentum into that final match that fans didn't need to go home happy because they were already pleasantly happy by the ladder match second in the card.
Right, I agree with that. And once you get the crowd going, especially from the beginning, which the Inferno match wasn't that bad at all.
Not at all, actually.
You know, it did what it needed to do. And you get, that's momentum. Unfortunately, the momentum kind of ended at the end, but as you mentioned, there was just enough to say, okay, that wasn't that bad. And actually, for a SmackDown pay-per-view per se, it came off. You got to credit the writers, and obviously credit the wrestlers for making it happen. So it turns out to be an above-average pay-per-view.
Armageddon, one of my favorite pay-per-views of the year. I don't know why, but just for some reason or another, it is one that I look forward to. Now, I will say I personally did not order the Survivor Series or ECW's December to Dismember. I did catch both shows, and I found Survivor Series okay. I didn't find it horrible. December to Dismember was horrible, in my opinion. Did this show, Armageddon, bring back some of the credibility to the WWE pay-per-views and wipe away the stale taste of those prior two pay-per-views, which widely were viewed as disappointments by the wrestling fans?
And bringing back your point with, did they have too many gimmick matches to make that happen? Because now you've raised that pay-per-view to a certain level, where you do bring a December to Remember, and you do bring in the smaller Dismember. You bring in the smaller pay-per-views per se. Well, wait a minute, they didn't have a ladder match, and they didn't have an Inferno match or a casket match or whatever they needed to do. So having too many may hurt the small ones that they have during the year.
It's a valid point, Now, it was a SmackDown pay-per-view, as you said.
Right.
And as was made clear.
Sort of, with certain wrestlers
Exactly, that's
crossing
the question.
over.
John Cena, obviously, on the card. Jeff Hardy, Raw Intercontinental Champion, on the card. And Johnny Nitro from Raw on the card as well. Now, the argument to that is none of them belonged on the ECW pay-per-view.
No.
And how many times have we seen Mercury and Matt Hardy on Raw? So, is it that these are your players across the board, if you will, from WWE, and they're interchangeable due to the unique dynamic of the fact that they're teams, but they're on different brands, and the fact that Jeff Hardy is still holding on to that Intercontinental Championship, and he's got the big match with Johnny Nitro coming up at the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view. But is this something, obviously, that, in my opinion, they needed on the card, but is it something that they should have done, or should it have remained an exclusive SmackDown-only pay-per-view?
This pay-per-view, the writing for it was done months ago.
Potentially.
Potentially.
There are rumors that say WWE doesn't write so far in advance.
They obviously tweak it in lieu of injuries and so on. But their thought was, oh my goodness, we can't have this pay-per-view on paper look like this. We'll have John Cena. We'll have a relatively comeback by Hardy, and that'll drive enough of the wrestling viewers to watch this pay-per-view. That's my opinion, of course. So, did they need to have John Cena? Maybe to get those extra 10,000 buys or so. But as we've always talked about, if you're going to be your own brand,
distinctly different.
The only reason why you would even have John Cena is to pump up maybe the next Raw pay-per-view or the next Raw coming up. Or you don't have him in a match whatsoever, and you have Michael Cole saying, we have an exclusive interview for tomorrow's Raw with John Cena that you'll only see here on the pay-per-view. But don't have him wrestle then.
Should the ladder match had been announced prior to the pay-per-view occurring? There are a lot of people out there who are saying that WWE dropped the ball and missed out on potential buys by giving this away for free and not publicizing it prior to the actual event. Should they have done some efforts to publicize it, even if the decision was made on Saturday and Sunday, which is what rumors indicate, should they have at least scooped it on WWE.com?
They could have dropped some hints, because there are wrestling fans that, hey, it's a ladder match. I'm going to watch this thing. Something's going to happen. If it doesn't say it on that wrestling card, there's going to be some buyers, well, it's not worth it. Now, on the flip side of that, you can't say, look, things can change. You have to watch because you'll never know. Which, again, brings back that point, now that next pay-per-view, if there isn't a significant change there, well, wait a minute, they did it last time. Why didn't they add something at the end of Royal Rumble or something like that? So
the things that stick in my mind, I think it was a good move by WWE to make it a surprise, because if you missed it on pay-per-view, you've missed it. And now what are they doing? Pushing the replays. And that match alone is worth, I think,
that's one of the matches of the year.
pay-per-view.
It's one of the matches of the year.
Two other events I remember something like this happening. Think back to WrestleMania 9, when Hulk Hogan won the WWE Championship from Yokozuna after Bret Hart lost it. Unannounced. Hogan wasn't in it. He was in a tag match with Brutus Beefcake, for God's sakes. The second was last year's New Year's Revolution, where Edge came back, cashed in his Money in the Bank, and won the WWE Championship from John Cena. I think that the more surprises you give people on these pay-per-views, the better off the business of pay-per-view will be, because you have to tune in to find out what's going to happen. And just like in the past, it can be that something big is going to happen on pay-per-view.
But would you be disappointed if you watch the next pay-per-view and there isn't a significant change?
I wouldn't say disappointed. I would say that the fact of those surprises and those changes are just that. They are surprises, they are changes, so you weren't expecting them, so it's almost like sugar on your Wheaties. You can have the Wheaties without sugar, but if you get sugar, they're a bit better.
Exactly.
So I don't think it would be a disappointment to fans at all. I think it's a great play by WWE, and I think that they stole the December pay-per-view landscape by A, being last, and B, putting this match in there, because quite frankly, without this match, I think it was still a good show, but this one really, really sent it over the edge.
I will say this over and over again. When you're paying for a pay-per-view, there should be moments in that pay-per-view where you go, oh my God. Or
Holy sugar, honey, and iced tea moment.
Exactly. Or stuff that they might not show during a regular Raw or SmackDown. That is your money's worth. And so now I'm not going to expect, because they won't do it all the time, but the next time they have a SmackDown pay-per-view, they might need to tweak it again just to gain those viewers. Hey, that SmackDown pay-per-view did change again. I'm going to buy the next one. So we'll see if they do that. They're smart people there. They know what they're doing. So we'll see what
Contrary
happens.
to what Jim Cornette had to say about WWE Impact 2 weeks ago.
Right.
That is our top story, folks. Armageddon delivers. I think a solid pay-per-view from WWE. I think silencing a lot of the problems that people had with the previous two pay-per-views from WWE. Better than Turning Point? Don't know. But it was a good pay-per-view nonetheless. Now let's move into our news and views for this week, ladies and gentlemen. The first news item in this news and views is you saw him on Raw, the 3-hour Raw this past Monday. His name was Vladimir Kozlov, and had some horrible English.
Those for down, yeah.
His real name is Oleg Prudius, and he was actually brought to the WWE by Jerry Jarrett, formerly of TNA.
Yep.
And the move where he met with WWE, which equaled his detachment from TNA. And this is the man who he brought up and said, hey, take a look at this guy. He was sent to DSW, Deep South Wrestling, and has now been called up to WWE. He does indeed have some MMA background as well, so should be a formidable competitor once he moves up to, clearly, the Raw roster in WWE. What was your initial impression of Vladdy?
Until he really can get into a match, as if any wrestler, you think, well, show me something. Mm-hmm. I think the character's there to start off, which we've never seen that in the past. But initially, okay, someone new, show me what you got, and we'll see how they develop in Raw.
In a disappointing move, Kenny has a last name now.
Yeah,
Kenny Dykstra.
I know Lenny Dykstra.
And that is why Kenny chose that name. Lenny Dykstra, his favorite baseball player, who plays
Nails.
for the...
They called him Nails back when he played with the Mets.
Did he beat up Vince McMahon?
No, he didn't wear the orange suit either.
Oh. Kenny Dykstra is the inspiration for... Lenny Dykstra is the inspiration for Kenny's name. He had to pick a last name, much like Mr. Kennedy did when he came over as Ken Anderson to WWE. And that is the name he chose. I think it would have been better if they had just kept him as Kenny!
Well, unless they're trying to just get him to change the persona of being part of the Spirit Squad. And eventually you've got to make that change. It can't be Spirit Squad forever. And they see his potential being as a singles wrestler. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to make his own identity. I get the Dykstra thing, and people do remember, especially on the East Coast, you know who Lenny Dykstra is. He played with the Phillies and the Mets. So,
did you happen to notice in the Battle Royal on Raw this past Monday, Johnny made a return as well?
Yes.
And, in order to get up to the 30 wrestlers, you saw Ron Simmons in there, the Brooklyn Brawler,
They didn't have enough on their roster. It seemed like they're going to grab anybody. I thought Lillian maybe.
You weren't in the back, huh?
No, they would have grabbed me, and then I would have ran out after I got killed.
Still got that bump
clause.
thing in your contract?
Bump clause.
2 new agents have signed on with WWE, now known as producers. 2 big names, actually. Robert Gibson, formerly of the not the Midnight Express, but the why does the tag team name escape me right now? They were so great. Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton.
It'll
come to me. It's not the Freebirds. It's not the Midnight Express.
No, they were the Red Tights.
Sure. Had a great run with the Midnight Express, though.
That was WCW.
Yes. NWA, then WCW.
Yeah.
But he is one of the agents now with WWE, along with Dr. Death Steve Williams. Dr. Death Steve Williams.
JR's favorite buddy.
Yes, indeed. That's his boy. You remember that great angle between him and Michael
That
Cole?
lasted about 3 weeks.
When he had his own little broadcast table on Raw.
Well, that and his boxing.
Yes, Butterbean and such. Yeah. But anyways, agents with WWE are going to be working the TV, and then on their days off from TV, they'll be working down with Ohio Valley Wrestling. And
the AAA of WWE.
Yes. So 2 new agents, replacing several departees such as Ted DiBiase, Tully Blanchard as of late.
Ted DiBiase still finds Jesus, and I guess they don't want that in WWE.
Have you got a chance to take a look at the movie See No Evil from WWE?
No.
The movie, in my opinion, was fairly horrible. And I love horror movies, even bad horror movies.
But you're a big Jason fan.
Friday the 13th,
Friday the 13th, the whole
Freddy
thing.
vs. Jason, one of the greatest movies of all
The
time.
moment that you mentioned,
for its significance.
if you do not enjoy a horror film, that to me is, I'm not going to see it.
It's watchable, barely, but it's watchable. It's watchable. And I think a lot is said by the fact that fans didn't want to pay $8-10 or whatever to go see it in the theater, but they're gladly paying $2.99, the new low price at Blockbuster, to go and watch it on DVD. I was in Blockbuster just the other day, not a See No Evil on the shelf, and they had a great number of copies of them. However, it has grossed $10 million already in DVD rentals alone, and it has become profitable. So the naysayers about WWE films not being a successful venture, the XFL, the WBF, Ico Pro Part 2, they've made money off of it. Granted, it costs a lot less to make than the Marine did, so we'll see what happens when the Marine comes out on DVD. But Steve Austin's new movie, The Condemned, will be released on April 27th in theaters. I think that one's probably going to do the best of the 3 that's been released so far. It is also said to be WWE Films' best production so far. So, Frank, does this say anything about the distribution channels that WWE should be using? As we know, many videos now go straight to DVD.
Right.
Is that a better choice for WWE? Because there's so many costs involved with distributing a film on film into the movie theaters.
It's ego. It's Vince McMahon trying to say, we can make it in the top 5 when a See No Evil came out. They were hoping, please get close to that.
I think it debuted at number 7 or 11.
And, okay, didn't work.
I've got the number 1 movie in the country.
But what they try to do is, work with the movie companies saying, we'll release that this week. So then they can come out and say, we've got the number 1 horror film in the country, which
they can spin it.
They can spin it as they can. Well, when your movie's 10 or 11 or when it starts, you can't spin it any other way. It goes to DVD, but the critics will knock it down. Hey, come on, it didn't even make top 10 for the week. You don't know how many screens it's out. It's just not going to work. But DVD sales help it out. So the bigger picture will show, hey, it made just enough for us to be profitable. That Vince McMahon does well.
And they have to explain that to their shareholders. Remember, WWE is a public company, so they can show it on the books as a profit. It's a successful venture. Not like Disney, who will spend billions of dollars on something and it might make millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, and be just barely profitable, and they'll can it. WWE has legs with this thing, and it's going to go for a while here, we think. ECW, something that may not have as good legs as the WWE Films division, scored a .9 rating on its Saturday night venture. A lot of people are saying ECW, in these headlines on these wrestling news sites where they just want you to click so you can be inundated with their pop-ups and all this stupid advertising. say, the ECW scores its lowest rating of all time. Well, look at the facts, folks. It was on an off night. It was on Saturday night. It did .9. Was TNA doing its lowest ratings of all time when it was on Saturday night, scoring the same rating with a similar share? No. ECW did good in a transplanted position. They came back this past Tuesday, scored a 1.5, slightly down from the 1.8 and 6s that they've been getting in prior weeks, but a solid rating nonetheless. The show that replaced ECW last week was on Sci-Fi. I forget the name of it, but it scored a 1.7 rating. So a smart move by Sci-Fi. They didn't lose any viewers. They certainly probably gained a different demographic from the particular show they aired. But a success, not a failure, I think, ECW's ratings for last week.
Think about it, 0.9 is
Still a
not
million
that
homes.
bad on a Saturday night, considering what else. I mean, there's, the sports are winding down as far as college football and so on, but that's not a bad number to have on a Saturday evening, knowing that there's 80 channels out there that they grab numbers from. So,
AWA has a posting on their website saying that Paul Heyman, recently released from WWE, will be making an appearance at an AWA show. Paul Heyman says he has not even spoken to AWA and Greg Gagne, and WWE has requested that AWA remove Paul Heyman's likeness from their website and advertising the fact that he will be on the show because Paul Heyman is still under contract to WWE.
Right.
AWA has responded by saying they will handle WWE's request in a timely manner, yet it is still on the front page of their website. Is there a swerve going on here, Frank?
Wow, that's a good question. Greg Gagne recently was released from WWE, so you don't know if it's the truth or not. I think they kept him around
long enough to make him happy for Vern getting into the Hall of Fame.
But I think once Greg Gagne mentions WWE, people click on their internet and they go, oh, AWA?
Yeah.
That's all he needs, just a few extra thousand people to get the AWA name out. So he'll say something just enough to tweak the audience. And I don't know if it's a swerve or not, though. That's a good question.
No swerve this weekend as VKM's $1 million challenge was not answered by WWE. Surprise, surprise. To refresh your memory, and as we spoke about last week right here on this very program, VKM issued a $1 million challenge to either Shawn Michaels or Triple H to show up for a fight. And one of the house shows this past weekend, they did not do that, which comes as no surprise to anyone. Again, Frank, are you surprised?
No. Why? They're not going to do it. But he's trying to make a name for himself, and it's just not going to work.
Rumors are still rampant that WWE is actually responding to the claims of VKM and to the requests of VKM. One of the ways they've responded, rumor has it, is that they have ended all of the comedy skits that DX used to do. As we've seen on Raw these past few weeks, we haven't seen any of that, quite frankly. DX taking more of a hardcore edge, especially this past Monday on Raw.
Shadows and everything.
They ruined JR's suit, by the way. Triple H's blood.
And they were shaking.
It's a solid ending to the show, by the way. But, WWE responding, whether or not legal action has been taken, only their lawyers and our lawyers know that. Not our lawyers, but WWE's lawyers know that. But VKM and TNA signs, any signs referring to either faction or organization, are said to no longer be allowed into WWE events. And there are a lot of fans who are up at an uproar about that. Well, quite frankly, it is WWE's gig.
Right.
It is WWE's building that night. It is WWE's TV. And really, why would they allow fans to bring in signs promoting the competition? It doesn't make sense to them from a business standpoint. They do say they support the freedom of speech, and they do say they support you bringing your signs and being interactive in the show and whatnot. But quite frankly, they should and do maintain full control over what's shown on their TV.
Exactly. And you have to do that. As they used to do with anytime a WCW fan will come into a Raw event and they confiscate that. And as you mentioned, it's their program. If you see a TNA sign or any kind of sign for that matter, that especially if it's right in the front, the camera view, they take it off.
Right.
So you got to be smart as a fan. You might get in the building with it, but it's not going to get on TV.
I think I figured out how this VKM thing could finally work in the end.
All right.
Picture it, TNA, 2007. Call it February, March, maybe even April or May, depending on if there's a no-compete clause after the contract ends or not.
Yes.
But what they need is much like the Outsiders in '96, 10 years ago in WCW. What they need is that one person to come over,
Yes,
on their own and be a part of VKM, and I think that person is Rob Van Dam.
possibility there.
His contract ends early 2007. He has been vocal about wanting to leave WWE. He may have that opportunity to do so. He may have to wait 90 days after his contract ends, depending on the nature of the contract, to go over. But I think that could be the nail in the coffin, if you will, for WWE's dominance over TNA, having that one person show up, because the fans...
Do you think Rob
will think
Van
it's
Dam,
huge.
just that?
I think anybody, to be honest with you. That's not a Tyson Tomko or a Charlie Haas or something like that, but I think anybody
Well, Kurt
who's
Angle.
a big name who comes over at this time, within the next few months. Because remember when Kurt came over, VKM was just sort of starting.
True.
So when you bring a big name over, somebody who is going to come on their TV and defame WWE, which RVD will gladly do, I'm sure, I think that is what will do it for this Angle being VKM.
The problem, I'm a Rob Van Dam wrestling fan. The problem he has is he's got fans out there, but that guy can't talk. He's not a very good. The charisma is just not there. Will it make a difference? It will, but I don't think it would have legs at all. People will switch and go, "Oh my God, Rob Van Dam is there," but then the moment that he wrestles, at least in my opinion, and I am a fan of his, but when he grabs the mic, it's just not. It's not the wrestler with the charisma that's going to make a big impact.
There's no Captain Charisma.
Exactly. I don't want to, piss off the RVD fans out there. I think he's a great wrestler, but
I think they're high on him.
Yeah.
Just saying.
But and that's another thing too. WWE may say, you know what, we don't need certain wrestlers that we know are doing stuff on the side. We got to stay as clean as possible. See ya, RVD. That's one less person that we have to give a urine test to every 2 months.
Those cost money, folks. WWE is doing another tour of Ireland, where we have many viewers.
Yes.
And that show, the one show that they announced for June of 2007, has indeed sold out. But don't fret, another show is apparently going to be added to that tour. So all of our fans over in Ireland, across the pond, stay tuned, especially at WWE.com, as more information will make itself available about that upcoming show.
Something's blowing up.
Kurt Angle tells the UFC on their TV, on their air, that he wants a fight. He wants to do it in the next 2 years, and he wants a match with either Tito Ortiz or Chuck Liddell, two of the big names in UFC right now. Sometime in the next 2 years, like I said. Frank, think about it. What could that do for TNA? When you look at the fact that UFC and TNA share a network in Spike TV, what would that do for, let's say, a pay-per-view, whether it be UFC's or TNA's, and where I think UFC is blowing TNA out of the water when it comes to pay-per-views. They're the only ones that come close to WWE. But be that as it may, how big could a dual-brand event be, UFC and TNA? I'm not talking about a sumo match at WrestleMania like what Big Show had a couple of years ago. I'm talking a dual-brand UFC and TNA present with Kurt Angle in a real shoot-fighting match.
I think from a wrestler's point of view, the wrestling fan would love it. Mm-hmm. The UFC fan would hate it. Because I believe that the UFC fan wants to see the real wrestling. Not the choreographed, I mean, you know what I mean.
Controlled situation.
Controlled situation, the whole thing. The whole thing. Exactly. You say it best. I think the wrestling fan would love it. The UFC fan, the fighting fan, would hate it because they don't want anything to do with wrestling fans.
Well, a good deal of them.
A good deal of them don't. They don't want to see the just the storylines that just are so stupid. They want their real stuff. That's what they're watching for. They don't want the storylines. They want bell rings and a match goes and just beat the crap out of each other. From my point of view, I think it'd be great. But Kurt Angle, as great of a collegiate and amateur wrestler he was, he's going to need 2 years because it's different than sitting back and waiting. It's your move, isn't it?
He has done shoot fighting before as Kurt Angle.
Yes, but not to. He would need at least a year outside of wrestling to get ready for something like that, because they make a fool out of him.
Well, then here's what you do. As soon as this Samoa Joe thing is over with, as they have their third match at the next pay-per-view,
If he's healthy.
do a UFC, do it on Impact. Do something. I think it's a grand opportunity for both organizations, UFC to be introduced to the professional wrestling fan, who I think would love it, and for the the TNA fans to be introduced to the UFC style action, which right now, while they're together in airing, which means they're back-to-back in most times, UFC's doing great ratings on Spike TV, folks. TNA's doing good ratings on Spike TV. It's a win-win situation for the network and for both organizations. However, it seems as if the one stumbling block is the person who heads the UFC, Dana.
Yeah, but it could work, but if I was a UFC fan, last thing I want to see is Jeff Jarrett come out in the middle and go,
I don't think you would.
You stink, stuff like that. And then
I think you would see Kurt Angle. They have angles in UFC.
Yeah, but
it's
they're
more reality-based.
Exactly.
I think that we can certainly see 6 to 8 months of build-up to a big-time match in a UFC octagon with Kurt Angle and either Liddell or Ortiz. I think it's got some legs. What do they think?
It would be interesting. Yeah, pwrshow.com. You tell us if you think that would work. A dual show, but only Kurt Angle. Because you couldn't have anybody else. It would ruin it. Kurt Angle in the ring against, and I don't know any of the UFC wrestlers' names, but or fighters' names. It could work, but only once.
Danny Doring is the latest releasee from ECW. Danny Doring's been released, and then on top of Paul Heyman and Big Show, who were also recently released under whatever circumstances. And there are many rumors out there that with ECW now touring with SmackDown, the need for mid-level talent is not there anymore, so there might be more releases coming down the pipe. We don't know. We won't speculate. We told you about what if a couple of people left last week, but that's all we know for sure as far as who's gone. Danny Doring, the latest release from ECW. Frank, it's time for the Fan of the Week.
Yes.
This week's Fan of the Week is James from London, England, across the pond, and he says,
"Hey guys, I tried asking this once before, but had no joy. Thought I'd try again." And we're going to give that a shot. When, if ever, do you think they'll give Shawn Michaels another title run? I think it would make great sense after DX has run its course, despite a lot of groans, and I still find them entertaining, but not too much longer. I think a nice feud between him and Cena would be great. Do you think this would ever be possible, or do you think that after DX calls it quits, they'll just go back to Triple H being the monster heel perma champion? Love the show as always, James, across the pond in London.
Shawn Michaels, I believe, last had a title run in 2002, just after he came back when he had the series with Triple H, when DX was briefly reformed in a Raw ring, and then deformed right after that by Triple H with a pedigree.
Yep.
Sure. I don't know if he needs it. I don't know if we need it.
It would literally be one of the last things of his career. Now, again, it's so hard to tell when a wrestler is really going to retire, but if he would, being now that he's a man of God in the last 3, 4, 5 years, if he were to tell Vince McMahon, just one more, just give me one more, I'll drop the title the next night, but just give me one more shot, I think it can be done. It could be done, but it'd have to be a wrestler that he would trust. The only one he really trusts is Triple H,
Well,
to an extent.
yeah, I think it'd work with pretty much anybody.
But the last thing that I want to see is Triple H in another championship match, which, again, there are rumors out there for WrestleMania, but we'll cross that bridge. But, yeah, I think they could give him another run. But, if it's going to knock down, let's say, an up-and-comer, just to have him have that title one more time, that's useless.
But if it's what the fans want, that's what the fans will get, especially when it comes to big names. Remember Hulk Hogan, 2003.
Yeah.
It took from WrestleMania Backlash for him to get the strap put on him for that nostalgic feel. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. Thank you, James from London,
Yes.
England, across the pond. Appreciate that email. Folks, to be fan of the week, all you need to do is email us. You can do so at mail@pwrshow.com. We select one of your emails each week to share on air. From that, let's go into hits and misses for this week. The way I see it, the recent television product. The first hit of the week, I think, was K-Fed on Raw. I will say, like I said, when he first showed up, Kevin Federline cuts a hell of a promo. Kevin Federline is a hell of a performer, not a wrestler, but a hell of a performer.
Okay. As long
and
as
a
you
hell of
say
a
that.
talent.
As long as
Much
you say
like
that.
Eric Bischoff, who is a hell of a performer and a hell of a talent, Kevin Federline could do something with this wrestling thing.
Oh, he can't wrestle.
Because exactly. He should not be wrestling, but would he not make a great antagonistic manager?
Okay, yes. But don't put him in the ring. Yeah, or he's going to be wrestling Cena or whenever it is, but he can't wrestle, and it's a joke. We don't need to see what we saw in WCW years ago when they gave the strap to
David Arquette.
Don't do that. That's going to piss me off, and it's going to piss off a lot of people.
The last thing anybody wants, folks, is Frank Cossentino pissed off. I've seen it. It's not fun.
But yes, can he do well on the stick and antagonize? Definitely, he's good at that. Well, he's a rapper, I guess, whatever you want to call it.
Some would say.
Some would say.
The next hit of the week was Armageddon. I think it was a hit. I think it was a great pay-per-view, and I think it was redemption for WWE to put on such a great show so late in the year after coming off.
That was a sigh of relief.
Shows.
It's a sigh of relief from WWE standpoint.
But you can still have fun at a pay-per-view.
Yes.
And the final hit was Jim Cornette on color commentary on TNA last week after Don West got ankle locked out of the building. Hopefully he'll be out for several months.
Or several years.
I wish injury on him just because I just can't stand to hear his voice on TNA television. But be that as it may, Jim Cornette, again, one of the greatest mouths in professional wrestling. And him and TNA melded very well together on Impact, I thought.
Surprisingly, but that's how good Cornette is. It could be at any moment, and he'll be able to mold together with anybody.
The misses from this past week, I think the 30-man Battle Royal on Raw was a bit of a miss. Namely because all the wrestlers who had to wrestle later that night were in the show, and as we talked about earlier here in this program, they had to just find people to put in the match.
Right.
And JR calling it alone,
it's hard to
he
do.
did a good job, but having done that, and it's not easy. I thought it told a good story. I think actually Kenny should have won it, just because they should have surprised us with the winner of that Rumble. They should have not
right,
Rumble,
with
but
Edge
Battle
coming
Royal.
out victorious.
Even Johnny Nitro. Somebody should have surprised us and won that matchup. And then you've got a whole other thing going in that particular angle. The second miss, I thought, was Petey Williams wrestles on Impact last week. Wrestled Chris Sabin, I believe it was, for the X Division Championship. And he wins the match. It was Christopher Daniels, rather. Wrestles the match. And we don't see the single greatest finishing maneuver in the history of professional wrestling.
In your opinion.
The Canadian Destroyer.
It's impressive. I'll give it that.
It's like Jake the Snake Roberts wrestling, winning a match without the
Dameon.
It just doesn't happen.
Or Alice Cooper.
That was a miss last week. Third miss of the week for last week was the opening match on Raw after the Battle Royal, featured Johnny Nitro. Not once did either JR or the King mention the phenomenal ladder match from the night before. They did so later in the show, but you should have opened up giving kudos to those performers.
Well,
I
think they were trying to show because of the bandages, and he came out with Hardy and all that.
And also, think back to the Raw after October 20th, 1999, after No Mercy, after the big ladder match that made ladder matches famous, Edge and Christian versus the Hardys.
Yep.
They all came out to the ring, all four of them, showed a ton of respect for each other, and put over the match more. I think we could have had that opportunity on Raw this past Monday. So a miss in my book. That is this week's hits and misses. Let's give you a couple of updates on the show, the program that you're watching right now, the PWR show, which can be seen at pwrshow.com. We've now entered an exclusive agreement with a website called grouper.com, another video website where we are one of the featured shows on that website. And make sure you hop on over to that site, grouper.com, and take a look at some great videos and some would say a bit of a better interface than either YouTube or Google Video that's out there. So we are very pleased to be a part of the grouper.com team. Next week is the Pro Wrestling Report Honors. Meathead will be back here in the studio. Carl Love will also be joining us here in the studio for the 2006 Pro Wrestling Report Honors. The voting has closed. We'll be announcing the winners next week along with our top 5 of 2006, our panelists' votes, who we voted for in each category, and a heck of a lot more, all on the special edition of the Pro Wrestling Report next week, right here on this very program. The newsletter link on the website is now active. Sign up. Get those exclusive updates from the Pro Wrestling Report, as only we can deliver, by signing up for the newsletter. Click on the link on the front page of the website. PWR Daily, Frank.
Yes.
You and I will be partnering up on PWR Daily from this point forward, and we have answered your questions, and we will continue to do so, as our Email Monday segment has proven to be the most popular segment each and every week.
Unreal. Unbelievable.
We are expanding it, folks. It's not just Email Monday, but it's Email Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So 3 days a week, we'll spend several minutes on PWR Daily answering your emails. Frank Cossentino and I will be doing that starting up this Monday, actually, with an edition of Email Monday. So keep those emails coming, and we will answer all that we can in the time we have allotted for those PWR Dailies, Monday through Wednesday. Thursday will continue to be the feature match of the week, and the only way to find out for sure when those new videos are available is to become a subscriber on our exclusive YouTube channel. You'll get an email every time a new edition of the Pro Wrestling Report is available. It costs you nothing, folks. Remember, this show is free. We will continue to be free, and we do it for you, the fans, as fans, not insiders, because we never claim to be insiders. But subscribe on our YouTube channel and get those updates every time the show is updated. As you see this week, we've got a couple of new glitzy things going on in the show. Well, there is more where that came from. We'll be expanding the website and the show coming up in January of 2007. Be sure to keep tuning in. And thank you for your support, especially those of you who are continuing with our grassroots campaign with the Fight Network and the Wrestling Channel over across the pond and Versus here in the States. Continue to send that feedback, and we appreciate your efforts in those efforts to get on those airs. Was well said, I must say so myself.
You need a glass of water now.
Let's go to our top five, Frank. Now a part of the Pro Wrestling Report Weekly show. Frank, take it away.
Well, we do it every week. It's the top five. We don't have Meathead's top five, but we probably have.
Yeah, we don't need it.
Yes, we do.
Maybe you can phone it in. He's got 1 week left on his contract. You know? He had the nerve to ask for more money.
Why don't we start off with your top five?
Sure.
It's the definitive top five.
The one each of you clamored to your television sets to see.
Dameon Nelson.
Number 5 on my top 5 list, ladies and gentlemen, former leader of the Spirit Squad, Kenny
Dykstra.
Number 4 on my top 5 list, ladies and gentlemen, K-Fed. I sure did.
No.
Hey, I like it. He can cut a promo in that ring.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. He can.
Number 3 for taking out Don West, Kurt Angle.
Yes.
From TNA. Number 2, Mickie James, who put on a good match up against Victoria this past week. Didn't do so well in the end result of it, but Mickie James, I think one of the best female talents to hit the WWE at a very long time. And number 1 for taking what is to be said as one of the sickest bumps in the history of professional wrestling. Not that he tried to, folks. Joey Mercury of M&M.
Yeah, his eye just swollen shut within seconds.
Never seen so much blood so fast after a wrestling spot.
My top 5 quickly will go as follows. Number 5, we're also going to start with Kurt Angle for hopefully taking out Don West for a long period of time. Don, take as long as you want.
Maybe he can spend more time with his insane daily deals on the TNA shop website.
That'd be good.
Going back to his roots for that one.
Yeah. Number 4, also we'll go with Joey Mercury. Just give the guy his props for sticking it out. I mean,
he's going to be out for quite a while.
Yeah. Number 3, let's go with, we haven't said them all night, basically. Ooh, Maga!
I thought we were going to hail.
No, but it could be hailing in Denver still. Am I up to 2 now?
Sure, yes, you are.
2?
2, number 2.
2. Let's go with, we haven't seen him in the ring in a while, Sergeant Slaughter.
He was in the Battle Royal.
He was in the Battle Royal. And number 1, as I've already ruined my old school,
your number 1 wrestler of the week.
My number 1 wrestler.
I love the dramatic pause.
The dramatic pause. Greg Gagne for having the balls to say something about WWE and getting the extra hits that maybe he doesn't deserve.
You're something else, you know that? That is this week's edition of the Pro Wrestling Report, ladies and gentlemen. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is you celebrate. Even if you're a part-time Hanukkah celebrator, so you don't have to give gifts.
Or Festivus.
For the rest of us, happy holidays. Thanks for tuning in to the Pro Wrestling Report. Folks, make sure you check out PWR Daily next week. We'll still have daily shows on, even though the holiday season is upon us. And thank you for tuning in this week. Frank, thank you for sitting in for the man they call Meathead.
I tried my
who will be
best.
back next week. Next week, it is the 2006 Pro Wrestling Report honors right here on this very program. Be sure to tune in. Thanks for tuning in this week. We'll see you next time on the Pro Wrestling Report.